Thank you guys for attending here. We would love to expand with Tomer on Stellar how we can actually build configurable privacy for real-world payments. And I think Stellar has been very forefront, in that kind of innovation. And early January, you guys basically made a protocol upgrade to the network that enabled basically the primitives for those kind of application and capabilities actually. So I would like to explore how you recommend people actually to move from, okay, we do have now the primitives to enable those kind of products to exist on Stellar, to actually have those kind of features in place. So how maybe a payment operator that want to deploy their product on Stellar can actually start using those things.
Sure. So I think on the topic of privacy, our approach is very modular in the sense that it's really important for us to keep Stellar, the L1, as open, neutral, and transparent as possible. And so I think recently we've seen, there's a lot of permissioned chains that keep coming up. And this is a nuisance in the world of crypto that keeps coming up every couple of years. And now it's kind of like in service of privacy. But when we talk with institutions that are coming to build on blockchain, they're really interested in the openness, in the auditability, and the verifiability of the chain. And so it's very important for us to maintain these properties as we introduce privacy. And so our approach at Stellar is on the L1 itself, on the protocol. We want to make sure that it's completely open. Anyone can come and build. We recognize that there's a spectrum of privacy. And so you can have privacy that relates to different jurisdictions, different use cases, different tech. Obviously, we're talking a lot about ZK right now, but there's a lot of other potential tech, both now and in the future. And so we want to make sure that Stellar is an open network and stays that way. For that, we upgraded the network to Protocol X-Ray a few months ago. X-Ray delivers a set of cryptographic primitives that allows you to build your own privacy protocols on top of them. So that is the BN254 curve, Poseidon hash functions, kind of like really enriching the set of primitives for ZK. So that's on the protocol itself. With that said, we're also doing a lot of work on the ecosystem development and partnerships front to make sure that we're not sitting around waiting for people to build privacy, but we're collaborating with industry leaders such as yourselves, such as Nethermind, such as OpenZeppelin, on bringing in a variety of solutions that have a variety of privacy guarantees and a variety of administrative controls.
That makes totally sense. I think you guys launched also on your own Stellar private payments to show actually those capabilities. And yeah, I think on our end at Boundless, I think this is an approach that we are following as well, with our upcoming modular framework, the Boundless Digital Asset Stack, where we do believe that basically institutions, and we are testing actually during these events, that need a credible layer actually, like Stellar, to deploy their capital, and they need those capabilities in a modular fashion. So they need to be able to integrate seamlessly on their existing infrastructure, as well as maybe also have some end-to-end vertical solution. And I think the modular strategy is actually the thing that, in general, in DeFi and in crypto actually worked out. Cool. I think maybe the next question that I have for you, Tomer, is in practice, configurable privacy. What actually does it mean? What I should shield, what I should actually keep transparent? Because of course, institution doesn't want to broadcast, the values, their strategies on chain, or who are the sender and the recipient. So, but how they do decide, what they can disclose, and actually how they stay also compliant, on operating those kind of, applications.
Yeah, so I think when we're talking about configurable privacy, there are kind of like two main dimensions that we think about in terms of the configurability. One of them is what are the actual privacy guarantees that you get, and the second one is what types of administrative controls we have in place in order to be compliant. And so on the guarantees, I think specifically with payments, the main properties that you can think about are transaction details. That is, what's the actual amount that I'm sending, and then there's the identity of the senders and receivers. And so what we're seeing right now is that we're seeing a lot of work done on the confidential token space. We're also collaborating with Open Zeppelin and the Confidential Token Association on this. This is basically an ability to hide transaction details while maintaining senders and receivers visible on-chain. So this is really good for use cases like payroll, for example, where the identity of the players is well known. So everyone knows that I work for SDF. What we're trying to hide in a use case like payroll is the actual numbers, right? I don't want a payment to expose both, my existing kind of like salary, but also the complete history of transactions that I've committed. And so that's something that we're doing on the confidential tokens front. We're also seeing a lot of work on the privacy pools front. Privacy pools adds, these are payment protocols that also add kind of like a mixing component to it so that you completely obfuscate the senders and receivers. So this is kind of like better in like kind of like the general privacy sense, and it also adds anonymity, but it's kind of like more complex. And so there's also more compliance variables there, because you want to make sure that if I'm in a privacy pool, I'm not in a privacy pool with a bad actor, because if I am with a bad actor, then it might taint the funds of others in the same pool. So this is on the side of the privacy guarantees. On the side of administrative controls, we're seeing a variety of administrative controls, and because the world of compliance is not really caught up to the world of private blockchains or privacy on blockchains, we're not really sure what compliance means yet. And so what we're trying to do is to build a menu of administrative options. And so some of the things that we're looking at are selective disclosure. This is something that we've seen a lot with view keys. And so the ability of a user to be able to prove their source of funds without revealing it to the entire world. So kind of like ad hoc proving source of funds. We're looking at things like non-selective disclosure. So say, for example, that a law enforcement agency wants to get access to a specific record. The question is, how do they get access to that record with minimal access to the rest of the system? So, for example, through global audit keys and things like that. And then we have things like association sets, non-association sets, which are, I was talking about the issues with privacy pools and mixing with illicit funds. So association sets are kind of like a way to gate privacy pools. So these are some of the things we're seeing, kind of like some more options arise around like clawback functionality. And we just want to make sure that we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket. And so we're allowing for different types of solutions with different privacy guarantees and different administrative controls to coexist.
Makes sense. So what I hear is basically that depending on the actual use case, you want to have, let me say, a diverse spectrum of like privacy options, and that's actually the value, like of the primitives that you have been enabling, and like products, as you mentioned, like that we are building, as well other players or association actually that try to standardize, that thing. Okay, that's make totally sense. And if we want to focus a little bit on like long-standing institutions, especially banks and traditional finance actors, what are the tools that they can actually start using today with? So what are like the approaches that they can use to stay compliant but start actually to deploy capital on Stellar or in general on-chain? You mentioned like ASPs is like a similar concept that they already have. in their like compliance tools, but yeah, what are maybe others approaches that institutions are exploring?
Sure. So, we just put out a project called Stellar Private Payments, which is a collaboration with Nethermind. And that's basically the idea there is having like an open source package that financial institutions can get acquainted with. They can deploy their own version of it. They can modify that. And we're building this menu of configurable privacy options and configurable administrative options right into this. And so that's something that people can use. Right now, we have a long roadmap ahead of us, and so we're really looking forward for feedback. And so, and I'm already hearing from other projects in the space that are starting to use that as a baseline for deploying their own privacy solutions. I am curious, you guys at Boundless are also in the process of building your own shielded vaults. Curious to hear how you're thinking about, administrative controls, especially around the idea of building something that is flexible enough for different institutions working with different regulatory requirements.
Thanks for the question. I think our approach, as we mentioned earlier, is very modern in this sense. So we basically have on-chain capabilities to define inclusion set or non-inclusion set. So basically that you're a good guy, or at least like you're not using bad guy monitor. But also an interesting approach that we've been following, and I think that ZK is uniquely enabling that, is that whatever compliance logic you do have off-chain, you can bring it actually on-chain and verify that a payment is compliant, an operation is actually compliant through ZK proofs. So we've been integrating with like tools like Theorem Labs to Comply Advantage to the traditional tool belt that institutions actually do use, and be able to basically, when you do a movement on chain, you do a payment, you do like an investment, you do like some treasury management, that basically those checks are actually valid. So you don't have to, as an institution, you can actually use newer tools that maybe are more like blockchain native or add some more capabilities to the compliance that you need to do. On the other end, you can just bring it on chain, whatever you use. And I think that's very important for this institution, because generally we see with other approaches more like, hey, you have to launch your own chain, okay? Or you have to deploy on our own chain, or you have to use a specific framework. That's a very important front cost for them, because they need to learn something new, or maybe they have to spend like 6 to 7 figures to actually run a chain and also attract capital there. Instead here, the idea is that, okay, wherever you want to operate, okay, in our case like Stellar, but also other ecosystems, you can just use this framework, this product, deploy the things where you need, and just start using without any sort of like big front investment. We already know that especially institutions have, let me say, longer cycles in general of product development and sales and stuff like that. We want to basically reduce to 0 the entry barrier there, because it's really like hard, blockchain in general, those kind of things for people that don't use them day by day. And so I think that UX and onboarding is definitely something that you need to keep in consideration when you as a pillars to the product development.
Very cool. And you talked a lot about ZK, and I think we had a little talk outside about this. It does seem like zero-knowledge cryptography is getting all the spotlight right now in terms of the actual privacy tech, and ZK is uniquely suitable for payments specifically because they can be easily expressed as a set of ZK proofs. The question is, is this going to stay with us? How are you guys thinking about the future? How are you thinking about non-payments use cases? We're thinking a lot about private DeFi, about private trading. I don't think it's going to come, this year or in the next few months, but this is around the corner, and ZK is not necessarily always the right solution for it, or is it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thanks for asking. So timelines, can change. It depends on a lot of things. But So two things I want to say. So the first one is that definitely ZK is the first candidate as a technology to do these things, but we cannot reduce to ZK to be the only thing for privacy preserving, or let me say confidential finance or DeFi here. There might be a spectrum of other approaches.
Why do you separate confidentiality and privacy? What are the different terms mean?
I think that I tend to associate to privacy to like full privacy. So being able basically to stay fully anonymous in that sense. Whereas for confidentiality, that's something that basically you decide what you actually disclose. And that's for me more like configurable privacy in that sense. So like we've chatting before, like, you know, being able to selectively disclose to third parties about those operations when maybe not always, but when you need. So be compliant with, you know, the legislation where you operate, the regulators, or maybe other third parties. So that's what I mean. But getting back to the topic about confidential DeFi, I think that we can definitely operate like on existing protocols about lending or like DEXs within using privacy pools. And I think the technical challenge that we do have today sometimes is how we can enable composability across those use cases. So for the single use cases, so if you want to do private swaps, private, you know, private DEX, or even like private lending, confidential lending, you can definitely do. The challenge that we're exploring when we are basically, we have a stream of research about the composable proofs actually, ZK proofs, is that how you can, you know, like have composability across, because I think that composability ultimately is something that DeFi innovated a lot. So being able to compose those operations naturally, atomically, is a good value. So being able to recover even in a confidential environment is actually something that very important to achieve. I'd say that probably like by the end of 2026, we're gonna see something like that will work hand to hand and will able to compose.
Very cool.
Yeah. Okay, I think just be respectful of time. I have a final question for you, Tomer, which is traditional institution so far operating in a more like, let me say, opaque fashion. So all the software that has been running has been always proprietary, and like it's very hard to like understand what's going on, and also from a security perspective, like you don't really know if, you know, there is a bug or there's what's the security risk there, and that's actually a huge cost for, you know, institutions. And I think that blockchain technologies that are especially invested a lot in being sure that all that kind of technologies and the most important stuff are actually open. So I'm wondering what's your take about like having those set of technology compared also to other like players that are trying to solve this problem, to be like an open framework and an open space where people can actually, you know, dive deep and basically verify on their own.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, blockchains in general, and obviously privacy specifically, these are systems for interoperability. And part of being able to interoperate with other actors is that there is a very clear set of rules that everyone agrees on. And when we're talking about blockchains that are open participation, not like some of these other kind of like permission chain solutions, but real, true open participation chains, the only way that we can achieve this complete alignment where everyone knows the rules is if they're completely open source. And specifically for privacy, this is even more important because ZK can be so opaque sometimes that without having this clear visibility, it will be very challenging to get confidence in this technology.
Fully agree. I would answer the same way. I think we are actually on time. I'm wondering if maybe someone from the audience have any question for us. I mean, we stay here, and so I see a question there.
We're speaking a lot about institutional permissioned interactions specifically, but I was wondering what's in it for permissionless individuals? Not only the TradFi institutions, is there anything for smaller scale users to take into account here?
Yeah, look, for 10 years in crypto, we've been dealing with like the ideological version of privacy and peer-to-peer transfers. There's great tech, it's available. It's hardly ever used because it's not very useful, right? And so the ideological value does not necessarily translate to monetary value. And if we want adoption for everyone, not just for the institutions, at the end of the day, if an individual wants to be able to receive a payment from the company that they work with, if they want to be able to off-ramp that into cash in their hands so that they can actually use their crypto, for these things, you actually need the institutions in play. So, if we have like this, beautiful or serendipitous, closed circle of privacy, that doesn't help anyone.